Stu, every week we do this, and I start the podcast in exactly the same way. It's become a little bit of a cliche, and I think it's time to change it. Well, maybe not change it for good, but just mix it up a little bit. Not start with the usual, because I don't even know I'm saying it. I've realised this listening back, that every week, sit down, do the podcast, don't script the introduction or anything like that, so it always sounds the same. But people know it's the 9 Years podcast. People know that I am Nick Draper, and people will know that you are the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deakins. So I just thought, vary it up. Might not even put music on at the start this week. Just get into it. Just straight in. That's the best way sometimes. No messing about. Straight in, get it done, and we are finished within 45-ish minutes, which reminds me to look at the clock so I don't run over. So about 5:20 is when we shall finish this, which means nothing to the listeners because they're listening to the recorded version. But to you and I, Stuart, means that I'll miss the first 5-10 minutes of Pointless, which is sad times.
It's silly, isn't it? Why are you doing that?
Why am I missing the start Pointless?
What? Yeah. I struggle with it. It's a difficult game for me. I struggle with it. I started watching more. I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with the subjects, to be honest with you.
Well, that's fair, but that's true of any game show.
But I'm quite enjoying like Family Fortunes at the moment. Although I can't put it because this is a family show, but there was a clip going around at the moment of the most funniest one. You know, they do it at the start of like how many people. There's a question of. I've got to say it now because I can't. Obviously, you're looking confused. But basically, they asked a question: out of 100 people, what did they say they can put in their mouth without swallowing? It is the funniest thing, and trust me, the answer that we all think is going to be said was said. It is. Oh, it's hilarious.
Tennis ball.
Of course, that's the one. Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Toothbrush. There's loads of things that you put in your mouth and we don't swallow. Chewing gum.
Oh, I don't know. I've swallowed chewing gum in the past.
But not deliberately.
No, I suppose not. Although people have when they've been caught chewing it in class, which is never a good thing to do.
They don't stick it underneath. See, I'm going back to the days when we used to have these like massive. We used to have like massive desks that you could open them up at the front and then you put your stuff in. But then you'd always find chewing gum underneath it because someone had thought it was funny.
Yeah, always. I remember those desks. You'd open up the flap and there'd always be this gooey stuff underneath. And it's been probably been there decades. Absolutely decades.
But yeah, so that game shows is, I'm Family Fortunes at the moment. So Pointless is a little bit,
Pointless is what it is, really. And I'm going to miss the start of it because we're doing the podcast and I'm now rambling. But listeners, thank you very much for joining us this week. We will be discussing more things to do with fans not being in stadiums and having to watch everything on TV and the associated costs of that, whilst also looking ahead to the first game of football to be played at Plough Lane, or the new stadium on Plough Lane, which, again, fans will not be able to attend. It is typical of our luck with this stadium, the way things have gone, that it finally gets built in the middle of a pandemic and supporters are not allowed into stadiums. But we're talking about the first fixture, which is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 3rd of November, against Doncaster Rovers. But before we do all that, we'll also be looking back at the games with Burton and Blackpool. But before we do that, a shout-out and a call-out. We didn't do this last week. Last week was, well, let's ignore last week happened, listeners. I don't even really remember it. The last couple of weeks before half-term, Stu, I've got very vague, I don't really have any memories of it. It's just a blur, one big blur. And I think it's going to be the same come Monday. But listeners don't want to hear about my struggles with that. They want to hear a shout-out. And yes, let's actually start with Plough Lane. The shout-out is for all the people that have been involved at every step along the way to actually get us back to Plough Lane in our own stadium in Wimbledon, not in Merton. Do you remember when we first reformed AFC Wimbledon? 2002. And there was a tour of Tooting and Mitcham's ground.
Yeah, I went to it.
Something George Field. What was it called?
St George's Field? No,
is it St George's
that's the
Field?
England.
St George's Park is the England training ground.
King
George's Field is Rains Park, where it was once rumoured a stadium could be built.
Oh yeah, near David Lloyd, which is on the back of Rains Park Vale, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think that's the field there.
Tooting and Mitcham's ground. Who knows what it's called? We can call it whatever we like now. But I can't think of anything.
Isn't called Imperial Fields.
That's right, Imperial after the Mints. Yes, so that was a tour organised because at some point we were thinking of moving there, as we were still tenants technically at Kings Meadow. And then a few months later, we actually agreed to just buy Kings Meadow. But that was deemed as a return to Merton because we genuinely didn't think a return to Wimbledon was ever likely. And yet just a few short years later, here we are, our own ground, yellow and blue seats, well, blue and yellow seats, looking absolutely spectacular, looking much, much better than we thought it would do at one point along the process. And it's just a huge thank you, a massive shout out to everyone that's been involved in getting that done, including everyone that spent any money in getting us over the line. It is very, very exciting. It will be more exciting when fans can actually get into it, of course, but that does not mean that we should not celebrate the achievement of what the club has done.
Agree. Yeah, agree. You're right. I went to that Imperial Fields thing because it was Merton. Because you're right. You know, we felt that we had exhausted every opportunity to get back into Wimbledon because that's what we'd always been told, hadn't we? But thankfully, you know, the unbelievable thing, and I still remember saying this to you back in 2015. It's been about a 5-year journey, isn't it? Since, and I remember saying to you, I can't believe it, that we've actually had a councillor from Merton Council come to us with a ground. You know, all those years that we were trying to go to the council and say help. And I think, if I'm being truthful, I think it's a testament to the fan zone club in terms of what we demonstrated, the community work we did, the profile we had. The profile of AFC Wimbledon, let's be honest with you, is a lot higher in the community than unfortunately it was when we were in the Premier League. Times have changed, but it's been one hell of a journey. And it just feels to me like there's always government people that are involved. Like Boris Johnson is just mucking everything up, and he started off with ours, didn't he? Delayed it when he put it in for review. But this ground does feel like it. It doesn't feel like it's jinxed. It just feels like there is always something in the way that doesn't even spoil it. But do you know what I mean? Like, there's always something in the way that stopped it. And the latest thing is COVID, which none of us saw coming.
What would be AFC Wimbledon's sliding doors moment in history? What is the pivotal moment that's led us here? Because we cannot deny, and Jeff Norcott said this on our first podcast of the season this season, it is that moment where you question, if Milton Keynes had never happened, would we have ever got back to Plough Lane? If we'd have been, I'm assuming at some point we'd have been relegated from the Premier League. That it happened in the year 2000 probably is somewhat immaterial in the grand scheme of things. I don't know. But to think that only 2 calendar years later, the club had gone and we are setting up a new one in non-league. Had we maintained our Premier League status, even just for 2 more seasons, would the move been allowed to happen? Would it have garnered a lot more attention in the media amongst the wider football world if we were still in the Premier League? Would it have ever been allowed to happen? I just don't know. And you can trace these singular moments. You can trace our relegation from the Premier League. You could pick a random moment during the league season in which we were denied 3 points that would have kept us up on the final day. You could look to the Bradford City away game, for example. You could look to games at home to Coventry where we lost 2 points with a 91st minute penalty. All these sorts of things go through your head. You think, wow, if that hadn't have happened, how would history be looking different right now? It's one of those, when I was younger, and I'm still quite young now, but even younger, I used to read some comics. This is going back many, many years ago, Stu. These were actually before I was born, so they'd been my brother's comics. And they do like mirror universes where they change the storylines for a few months because some event in history changed and it corrupted everything. And I do wonder sometimes it would be fascinating if we could manipulate time. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It would probably be awful. It would probably lead to the destruction of society. But it would be fun for a bit just to see what you could change and what the effects would be.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I'm looking at that sort of moment, I think it was when Joe Kinnear had his heart attack up at Sheffield Wednesday, that midweek game. Because I think realistically, we never had a succession plan. That was our biggest fault. You know, if you think back to the days of, you know, obviously going back a bit before your time, but we had Ray Harford, Bobby Gould. You know, Joe Kinnear was a reserve team manager when the old sort of school when the reserve team manager come through, and you know, because you look at Neil Sullivan was reserve goalkeeper to Hans Sagers for years. Didn't go anywhere, didn't throw his toys out of pram, and then had an established career himself after that. But I think it was that progression. We didn't have a succession plan. And Joe Kinnear, as much as he gets slated now, Robbie Earle, again, said he was the best quarter-free manager out there. He didn't do all the coaching. Terry Burton did all that. But it worked. And I think that was the moment we just didn't do the succession planning. But, yeah, I know what you're saying. You sort of look at there, the background always was that the Norwegians wanted to sell, and the plan was to. But, if the FA did what their job they should have done and denied that, you don't know. The thing is, the money in the Premier, you've got to think in 2002, the Premier League was only 10. Well, according to Sky, football was only 10 years old at that point. So it's actually the money has got even bigger than when it was when we were there. So you sort of feel that there would have been someone that had come in and bought us, but we have never had this experience. And you and I have said this before. Some experiences I still chat to some of my friends at work about it. Some experiences that we've had, you just would never, ever, no one's going to see that again. No one's going to see Sandhurst. No one's going to see Feltham. No one's going to see Chelmsford City. There's so many, we've done the FA Cup draw on Monday, and my wife is just hilarious. She was like, Morden and Tiptree, that can't be a club. And I said, well, yeah, I know where they are. We played them, but we haven't played them. I think they've changed something there. I think they've amalgamated, but we did all that Essex League, didn't we? So some of the things we've seen have just been magical. So yeah, I think this Lion Door moment, I think it was good for us, but yeah, would have been interesting. 100 million pounds for being rubbish. It's amazing, isn't it?
The change in football since we departed from the Premier League. And you mentioned Sky with a little bit of foreshadowing for later in the podcast. I think that's the first time you've described, or anyone's described, Kent, travelling through Kent and Essex and Chelmsford and Malden as magical, but we'll let that one slide. What's amazing is when you look back to those days in the Ryman Premier League, travelling through every other week with either Kent or Essex, it was quite depressing. And you kind of think at the time it was never ending. That actually it was only for a very tiny, in the grand scheme of things, amount of time. But whilst you were living through it, it felt like it was just the absolute norm and things had always been like that. And yes, I remember freezing cold, even though watching football in the freezing cold is preferable to watching it in the heat. Can I just say, thank the Lord the clocks have gone back, so we can actually enjoy some proper weather for a few months, thankfully. But like the days of going to Billericay, and you said there, Chelmsford, and Ashford Town and places like that. Well, not Kent and Essex, but those random grounds we used to travel to. Anyway, we're rambling. We've gone off the point.
Very quickly, I know it's obvious. There's going to be loads of press wanting the story, and I think there's going to be loads of stuff on Football Focus and stuff this weekend. But when people say that it was, I've seen one with Dave Anderson, excuse me, saying that it was always obvious that Wimbledon were going to get back to Wimbledon and be in the ground. You and I went through it along with a lot of other fans, and it wasn't obvious. We weren't the big players in the league. Chelsea City, do you remember going there and getting beat 3-2 when they were the big spenders in the league? There was Fisher, and there was
always a team every year with Dean or Wallingford or Fisher,
exactly.
Or, as you say, Chelmsford
or Luton. Let's be fair, Luton. When we went up, we were never the favourites to go. Luton should have beaten us on any day in that playoff final, or any. They should have been a team that went up. We never. I think it's not ever been easy, and I think sometimes that story's got lost a little bit, where we weren't always the big players. We didn't spend the biggest money. We didn't have the biggest budgets when we went into the conference and in the League One. So I suppose what I'm saying is I don't want it to be diluted of how good we were. We got to Wimbledon and we're home, but trust me, it was the most challenging journey ever, and it's not as straightforward as it was always going to happen, because a lot of people worked really hard to do that.
The most challenging journey ever is to Barrow, by the way, who we've got drawn against in the
FA Cup,
which is by the by at this moment in time. But yes, that is our FA Cup first round draw away at Barrow. We'll talk about that. Well, no, let's just talk about it now, get it out of the way. For a variety of reasons, just an awful draw, because if you're going to get an FA Cup first round, really, you've got an expense now of getting the squad to and from Barrow, which you don't want to do in a day, and you're not going to make any money off it because no fans have been stadiums. It's not a game, although I've been proved wrong in this in the past, but it's not a game that I think is going to attract. If the BBC are doing their Sunday 2:00 kickoff thing again this year, where they put loads of games on for no absolute no reason just to disrupt the fixture calendar even more, because God forbid we have 3 o'clock kickoffs on a Saturday anymore. But there's some money in it at least, but I don't think it will qualify for that one. So it's a bit of a rubbish draw. That might be my call out this week, because my original call out is just so left field that it would not fit in with anything we've talked about so far and what we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to leave it for this week, but that might be my call out. It might be for Lindsay Hipgrave, who cannot read a sheet that corresponds teams to the number that they're on. It was a car crash. For the first dozen ties, I was watching I don't know, like Paranormal Activity. I was hiding behind the sofa between my fingers because it was horrendously awkward watching. Almost every other tie came out wrong. What she was saying was not corresponding with what was on the screen. But then my other shout out would be, as I pointed out on Twitter, why do they give us the list of ball numbers beforehand? I don't see the point of that. Like someone really sitting at home going, yes, I know which team that is 3 seconds before it's announced. Like, what is the point? I don't understand it.
Do you not play that game though? I played it. Well, I don't know if it's a game. It's probably just me just doing. I like the draws sometimes, but like I literally, as soon as the number's done, I try and check really quickly so I know who it is before they announce it. To be fair, it isn't really hard with the presenter that they had, isn't it? Yeah, well, do you know what? My wife Lorraine, you know, she's an opinionated person. Bless her. She was slating her. She was like, "You're so poor. Like, how did you get this job?" But she loves it just for the fact that there's teams that she seriously thinks that there's team names made up deliberately, like Cray Valley. There was loads that she went, they can't have a team like that.
Like Cray Valley Paper Mills or something.
Paper Mill. They put PM. They put PM in brackets as if like they play in the afternoons.
Well, they do.
Yeah, true. They could have a morning kickoff. Well, I suppose they could do. Yeah, but yeah, that's probably why they got it in their name.
There you go.
Always play in the afternoons. Yeah, it wasn't good, was it? And the draw is just horrendous. I suppose my thinking is, and I mentioned this to George in our Back to Plough Lane that we did on Tuesday after our win against Blackpool, is normally, from my understanding, is the away team get the home team have to supplement the away team's travel. From my memory, I think that's what they have to do.
Makes sense.
And they take it out of the gate receipts.
Right. Yeah. That does ring a bell. Yeah.
Do you remember? I think we've done some away journeys where we've actually done a train journey because we know that the cost has been covered, so we can travel in a bit more luxury. Well, how do you do that? Because Barrow could have no gate receipts. So how does that ruling work? The FA Cup money has been halved per round this year also. And I know it sounds silly, but the logistical side of it is that the last train back from Barrow is 6 o'clock. This game has to be decided on the night or on the day. There's no replays in the FA Cup this year.
Of course not.
So what I mean by that is logistically, Barrow may have to bring the game forward to 2 o'clock, or we're putting loads of subs on in the last minute if we sort of 1-1 draw because we need to get a winner so we can get home on time. It's just, for me, it's just, I love the FA Cup, but this is crazy cost in a day when we're getting no gate receipts. It just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, the answer is just let fans go back into stadiums. As has been pointed out and was pointed out earlier in the season, Barrow are next door to, is it Furness Rovers, who play at such a low level that fans are allowed in the stadium. So if you want to, I would suggest people, you go, if Furness Rovers are at home that day, we'll check the fixtures before the end of the podcast. If they're at home, go along, take a ladder, just peer over the fence, you might see some football. What a ludicrous world we live in. But talking of teams beginning with B, and I'm really sorry, ladies, I've done it. I did this last week, but it didn't get picked up because we messed up recording to begin with. I'm so used to saying ladies in my teaching because I teach in an all-girls school. And then when I try and say listeners, the L sound comes out as ladies. So I'm very sorry to any men listening or to any gender non-conforming or non-binary people that may well be listening.
Let's not go there.
Apologetic for that. But I was about to apologise, listeners, if you heard a big thwack just then. I was just adjusting the volume on my headphones. But teams with B, Burton and Blackpool were our opponents this past week. A 1-1 draw at the Pirelli Stadium. It really irritates me, Stu, when teams have stadiums that have got sponsor names, and I resent calling them by their sponsored name. I hate it. So Burton this week played at, I think it's Princess Way, as far as I'm concerned. Hull City the week before were at the Circle, because I don't like using sponsored names. But
I thought you were doing some sort of game show thing, because the Circle, I love the Circle. Like, that's the best. It's not a game show, is it? Is it a game show?
Well, yes, it's only a game show.
Yeah, and the Circle is amazing. Like, that should come back. When you put that, I was like, Oh, so who's going to go into what room? I just got me thinking differently.
At least it's a game show that logically shouldn't have any issue in going ahead because they're all living independently in the first place. There's no
Exactly.
issues of social distancing or mask wearing. It does not make sense to me. It could be quite easily put together. But hey, as we will come on to later, Stu, less is more. We don't need to have it every year. This is what ruins most reality TV shows by having them every single year. The only things that should be annual are like WrestleMania. And even then, with no fans, that shouldn't have gone ahead this year. But anyway, we really are getting off the point now. We've never got a win at Burton, away at Burton, so a point is as good as we've ever done, and we've picked up a point, even though, Stu, very frustratingly, and this was the key takeaway from the game, we took the lead with about 25 minutes to go, and we threw it away within half a minute. Really, I don't want to be negative, because we always start on the negative. I have noticed this. We always do start on the negative. Let's start on the positive. Ryan Longman took his goal very, very well and showed his Premier League quality in getting away from his defender who couldn't touch him, couldn't get level with him, and then kept his composure in the finish.
Yeah, do you know what? He's turning out to be a great loan signing. It's great we've got a relationship with Brighton because of obviously Max Sanders, who has now got some game time with Brighton. Yeah, it's a great goal. If you look at it from a defensive point of view, I always sometimes look and think how easy was it? How he rolls the defender on the touchline, crikey, Burton would be going mad. But from there, he's got a lot to do. You might think a lot of people might try and look and get a cross in. But he knew he had the pace. He knew he was faster. He knew he could get in. And once he got in on the angle, he's a really, really good finisher. If you look at the finish he did against Plymouth, where he just dinked out the goalkeeper, for a youngster, his finishing is really, really good. And that'll only get better. So, yeah, it's a very good goal. But as you say, hey, look, we're not guilty. We're not the only team that does this in terms of conceding when they've just scored. The best teams in the world do that. But when you've got a lead in a game that is just, well, it was just awful, the game to watch. When you get a lead, you take it and you basically say, right, shut up shop for 5 minutes. We'll get a win here.
I'm going to be honest with you, Stu, and say on Football Manager, I've never let a 1-0 lead slip within a minute because as soon as I score a goal, it's 10 men behind the ball. It's Jose Mourinho, my managerial icon, because I hate conceding goals. I really, really hate conceding goals as sloppy as the one we conceded as well.
Yeah.
It's a cross that's come in from deep. And is it Shoka at the far post who just seems to misjudge it? He just seems to turn as if he wants to run the other side and has taken his eye off the man coming in who finishes it well off the post, to be fair to him.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, if you look on the extended highlights that are available on iFollow, they literally do from kickoff. And if you look at it, and Glyn would have picked this up well before I did, but there was a very relaxed start. So Burton were able to pass it. I think they made 3 or 4 passes in midfield without no press. Then they done a long ball over to the left wing channel. And again, we didn't press. If you look at the whole goal of it, as if we just didn't switch on. We should have had, you feel, maybe it's that naivety, maybe it's the youngsters in the team, but we didn't press like we would, we didn't press that cross. If you look at when he puts a cross in, nobody near him. So, yes, the ball comes in and you would expect Daniel Shoka to be a bit better or be round on it. But it's just, there's no press on it. And, the whole game, we did that. It was a messy, horrible game. But we did all the dirty stuff. We scored the goal and we relaxed.
Nevertheless, you would take the point from that fixture. I know people say Burton are at the bottom of the league. They still only won 1 league game this season, even after they played on the Tuesday night. And it's, as we said, difficult place for us to go. I thought it would be a draw. I did say last week it would be 1-1. I did say on the Back to Plough Lane show it would be 1-1. In fact, Stu, I remember predicting 1-1, and you said, yeah, but we can ignore Nick because he never thinks we're going to win. And there, I was proved right. So I'm just going to take that. I'm going to take the reflective glory of that one.
You always go for the draw. Do you know what? I can't go to a game and someone goes to me, what do you think the score is? And I go, I think it'll be a draw. Because in my head, it's got to be a win or a loss. I don't like draws.
But yeah, you might not like them, but I mean, they are a big part of football in this country. Don't think, Stu, hey, look, don't take them for granted because in 10 years' time, the next thing will be we can't have draws like they already do in that stupid B team trophy. Can't have draws. Got to be a winner, so you get extra points if you then win a penalty shootout, as if that's any adjudicator of who deserves to win the game. Draws are an important part of football, so don't knock them.
I know, and I don't want to get in that stage because you're right, that has happened already. But yeah, I just don't go to a game saying it's going to be a draw. But you're right, I don't know how common they are percentage wise in a season, but there's obviously a lot of draws in the league.
There are indeed, and not just FA Cup draws, but we've done that one. Let's move on. So from there, we went to Blackpool at home at Loftus Road, our final game in Shepherd's Bush, before we come back to Plough Lane, and a win. Strange game, though. Strange game. We'll start with the positive, which is our goal, which is Callum Riley's goal, which he finishes again. Good composure to finish. But watching the goal back, from a Blackpool perspective, I thought it was a really poor goal to concede.
Yeah.
He runs off his man far too easily. He's got a massive head start on him when the ball from Shane McLaughlin, which is perfect, it's a perfectly weighted pass. But you're talking about our pressing against Burton. Blackpool pressing non-existent, go to sleep. Callum then is able, Callum does his part really well. He makes the run in the first place, but he must have thought, before he even got onto the ball, he must have thought, what a chance this is, because he knew he was away from his marker straight away. And then once he'd cut inside, no one goes towards him.
Yeah, it's a horrible goal. Again, like I say, he gets into the area, gets on the byline, and the defender wasn't tight enough. We all know once you get in the area, of course, any touch, you can go down, but it doesn't get touched tight on him. And then just rolls. And then after that, no one even comes out. It's, Callum Riley would have probably, from that position, looked to whether he could play Sean McLaughlin back in, but then realised he probably had the space to spin. And once he spins, it's a really good finish on that side. But yeah, if you were a Blackpool, you'd be disappointed. I think, from my point of view, it was really good because, Callum Riley has, I think did lose his place for one of the games and, wasn't, which I felt personally was a bit unfair because I think Callum's played well. I think he offers quite a lot. So for him to get his first goal of the season, I think it's his first goal of the season, was really good. But yeah, from a Blackpool point of view, nothing. But Shane McLaughlin gets another assist. He's just having, I said it's on back to Plough Lane, like Che Alexander has done nothing wrong, but he ain't got a chance of getting back in his team the way Shane's playing. It's good to have competition, but we brought him in, didn't we, as highest assist or highest number of crosses per game in the conference, and he's just sitting on the bench getting splinters.
McLaughlin's made that place his own, which is real testament to him, because I think after initial burst of really good form when he first joined, I thought he tailed off quite badly actually after that. Some very poor performances. I remember, would you remember Oxford away when Aaron Ramsdale basically won us a point with about 4 amazing saves?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was really one of the worst games I'd seen. So shows really good mental strength. He's come back in, made that place his own. He's got so much energy. He gets up and down all game. And he just looks like he's grown in stature as well. He just looks really confident. He looks like he's someone that grabs the game by the scruff of his neck, to use that sort of cliche. Normally attribute that to someone in central midfield, but he's doing it from that position in right wing back and doing a fantastic job. We were then helped to secure the 3 points, our only league win at Loftus Road as a home team, by 2 sendings off. So there are 2 parts to this. One is, against 9 men, should we have increased our lead? Is that disappointing to only have won by 1-0? Or do we say, look, we let a lead slip on Saturday, we've let leads slip against Northampton, and we've let them slip against Plymouth in the past. So was it not just good to concentrate on keeping the 3 points and getting over the line?
Yeah, and do you know what? Glyn inadvertently might have put some pressure on the team anyway, because I remember I was at a press conference after the Shrewsbury defeat, and he said, "Then we must leave QPR, Loftus Road, the Kyan Prince Foundation Stadium. We must leave it with a win. We have to." So he sort of, in a way, inadvertently put that pressure on. That we must get a win. Whether that impacted the players, we don't know. We hadn't won for a little while. Hadn't won since we were at Swindon, and we haven't obviously won. We won against Charlton, but that was early days, wasn't it? I think we just didn't play well. We just didn't move the ball around well enough. Blackpool was still a threat of 10 men. They didn't panic. The irony is Blackpool passed the ball better than we did with 10 men, which is what we needed to do with 11 men to get the space. But the sending off is a sending off all day long. And Blackpool players moaned and surrounded the referee. But if you look at the reaction of the player who slid in, he's got his hands on the back of his head as if like, I know, he slid in. He was out of control. Thankfully, Callum Riley saw it come in and was able to evade it to a certain extent. But it's the clearest sending off you're going to see this season.
What about the second one?
Second one, I wasn't too sure on, I've watched it back a couple of times and I'm actually to see now, it was very clear that the fourth official gave it, because you can see straight away he come out of wherever he was and he was indicating to the referee, and then the referee went over to him. It's a clumsy one. I don't know if you look at the first, he's the person that leads with his elbow on the first phase of it, and then goes back to a Blackpool defender who heads it back into the same area. And then the player doesn't get off the ground really, but he's still got his elbow there. I sort of wonder whether, because he was so reckless with the first one, like if you look at the first one, he leads with his elbow from a distance, doesn't get near the ball. Then he gets in there. So I'm wondering whether that sort of influenced the fourth official. But I felt it was harsh, but looking back on it, I sort of get why it was, because it was dangerous.
But overall, I mean, 9 men, 10 men is always difficult to play against because teams can put a lot of players behind the ball. They make life difficult. It's not a surprise when you see teams with 10 men getting results because they dig in and what have you. I remember going to West Brom one year in the year 2001, and we had David Connolly sent off for foolishly getting 2 bookings because he kicked the ball away. That's how he got his second booking at the Hawthorns. The referee thought, "You former Watford player, right? Red card for you." And we went on for about an hour against West Brom, who went on to get promoted at the end of that season.
Yeah.
And 93rd minute, Neil Shipley gets a winning goal for us with the 10 men. Celebrations were, well, very memorable that day. So it can happen. Against 9 men, it still happens. And I remember going back probably 10, 12 years, Luton, League One. Oh, I'm putting that on the list as well. Division 3. It's the third division. We're not kidding ourselves. Do you know there was a who was the politician? The politician got in trouble because they was
the Reading
saying,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't know where Reading was in the league. Said league.
Yeah.
Said Division 1.
But they are in Division. Like in his head, that is the old Division 1.
Yeah,
for many years
it
was.
Should be League 1, but I'm sure. Although, he was on the LBC, wasn't he? And I think basically he got challenged on it because he didn't know. He sort of said, "Oh yeah, well, I think he was led into they're in the Championship," and the guy and the MP went, "Yeah," and then they go, "Well, where are they in the Championship?" And he didn't know. It was probably a cheap shot, but surely, do you know what? Right, I think where it is on it is if your MP has a football club, and Reading is a fair sized football club, they should know a little bit about it, because of course it's such a, we need fans back in the game, don't we? And it's sort of showed in a way they're not totally up to date with football and potentially the damage that it's doing to communities.
Quite probably. Although if you were to ask me where we are in the league right now, I couldn't tell you. I would struggle. I had no idea Reading. Apparently, I've not got a hold on anything really, to be honest with you, outside of our games week to week. But anyway, point being, it was an old third tier fixture. Luton away at Oldham, and Luton got reduced to 9 men, and they ended up getting an equaliser at 1-0 down and drew the game 1-1 with 9 men. So it can happen. It is not as easy as it sounds. I don't know. I think we're just happy and we'll take the 3 points and say, look, we got over the line. We kept a clean sheet, which is the single most important thing you can do in a football match. We move on. We also had the beauty of it was that we also had Ollie Palmer making his debut as well, which kind of ideal circumstances to bring on someone that if you want to get them match fitness and match sharp, give them half an hour. You might sacrifice a bit of sharpness and maybe a bit of pace to take the game to a team with 9 players left on the pitch. But it's valuable for the individual and it will stand us in good stead later in the season. Yeah,
I agree. He needed some time. I thought he might get longer. So it probably tells you where he is with his fitness at the moment. Because I was hoping he might get half an hour, but in the end, I think he got 13 minutes. But yeah, do you know what? It's such. I think with Wimbledon, we love a number 9. We love a lump of a number 9. If you think about the players we've had before with the Fashion News and the Kedwells and stuff like that. And even, well, not Lalte wasn't a number 9 because he went to stupid 33. But, you just want that target man, that leader. And he is such a lump, like the sides of him. And there ain't much fat on him at all. He's a character. He's a lump. He got a booking within no time at all. I think he just wanted to introduce himself to the Wimbledon fans who are watching online. But he probably done, I want to say he done more than some people in 13 minutes, but he definitely showed the fans in that short cameo appearance what he can offer to the team. And that's really exciting because we're going to need him. We haven't got many options on the bench at the moment, forward-wise.
No, we're looking forward to him getting more games as we move on through the season. And definitely, Stu, we do definitely need that physical presence up top. But overall, of all of our players, who would you say had the best week for us?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I would probably, I'd probably say for Conall Trueman because I think, he's come out of 2 games, clean sheet on Tuesday night, didn't really have much chance in the Burton goal. Done a really good save early in the second half against Burton. So my probably thing would be Conall Trueman.
Who had the worst week?
I know there's a couple, isn't there? I probably would go with Luke O'Neill. Not to highlight, but it's the most hilarious thing with the late free kick that he slips on his backside and then he skies it out of the stadium. Trust me, I couldn't even do that with 10 attempts. He did it on 1, and then he got a knock on Tuesday, which means he leaves the field. I think I'm not saying he had the worst week because of the slip, because that can happen to anyone. I think it's just that, for him, I think he's played really well this season. It's a big loss for us. But do you know what? Football has a funny way of doing things, doesn't it? It's ironic that we may actually allow a certain Wimbledon captain to be involved in the first game at Plough Lane. Do you know what I mean by that? Football has a funny way of doing things, doesn't it? Not saying that Luke deserved to get injured. No one does. But it could open up an opportunity for Will Nightingale to be involved at Plough Lane. Football's a funny old game, isn't it?
Sliding doors, as we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
Does make you wonder. And yes, Doncaster do visit Plough Lane on Tuesday for the first football fixture at the new stadium. As we have mentioned, we're all very much looking forward to it. We have another fixture that comes before that, but we're not really going to talk about it much because, Stu, a fixture that I think means different things to different people. It's a fixture that I've always attended every single time it has come up on the fixture list. I've been to every single one. Clearly, I will not be going on Saturday. And as I've said to you, Stu, I think these games do lose meaning because supporters aren't allowed in stadiums. On the flip side, if we're just looking at it purely as a game of football, we've not won there in the league. Typically, we will win there when no fans are allowed to go there in a league encounter. We'll be helped by the fact that as an away game, we are used to playing in front of no fans at that stadium. So,
yeah. Hey, look, you're right. I've only missed one of the games. Ironically, was a 3-2 win in the Johnson Payne Trophy at the time. When Bayo scored the winner, if I remember properly, didn't he?
He did.
So, and do you know what? I actually love watching that back because I think Sean Rigg, Bayo, I'm trying to think who else scores. Can't think of the top of my head. Aziz. It's just when Aziz scores against you, you've got problems. Bless him. But yeah, so you're right, and yeah, the atmosphere there's never an atmosphere there. I think it's ironic. There's so many things, isn't there? Like it's the last game before we go back to Plough Lane. How does that happen? It's just football's just crazy sometimes. But from a football point of view, it's a game that we've got a great chance of winning. I don't think there's any less pressure on us because I think we know what the fixture means, and it's a really important chance. I know, football sometimes doesn't mean an awful lot, and with COVID, it's sometimes difficult to qualify what football means in this situation. However, we sit 5 points off a playoff place. We can get back-to-back wins. We then go into a new ground. We've got a decent team this year, so it might look at Wickham last year. Who would have thought Wickham would have got into the Championship and been whipped every week? They did. We have an opportunity. The underdog, the year, we might have a chance. So let's go there and win the game.
We are running very late, Stu.
Sounding great.
Yes, as always, but still running late. So we're going to great depth about what I was going to reference in terms of Sky, like I said earlier, and fans spending money. I'm just looking to see if Wickham actually have got a point in the league. They did. They drew with Watford of all teams on Tuesday evening. So they have at least got something charitable of Watford, something good that football club has done. I suppose they had to do something good once in a while. We were going to talk about a couple of articles that took my attention in the Times this week one from Henry Winter. Just quickly, we're talking about pay-per-view football. We talked about fans, still no movement on when fans will be allowed back into stadiums. Very disappointing considering Plough Lane is on the horizon. Henry Winter was discussing the pay-per-view option that's been offered by Sky and BT Sports for Premier League fixtures, not all Premier League fixtures, but many of them that were previously being aired. Not free to air because they are subscription channels, but you didn't have to pay extra for them. It's interesting, just very, very quickly on this one, Stu. Henry Winter says Premier League didn't think it through properly unless, of course, its aim was to damage its reputation and antagonise supporters. Well, antagonise supporters, yes. Damage its reputation, yes. But the problem we've got with Premier League is that really it's untouchable. It could literally, I don't know what it would have to do for fans to say, enough. And he's making a point that fans are already saying enough because they're not paying for pay-per-view games. Instead, they're spending their £15 or £14.95 in other ways, donating to charities. Lots of Premier League clubs have established those channels to get money to good causes. But in reality, what needs to happen is people need to stop paying for Sky and stop paying for BT and stop paying these enormous sums of money, because what we're forgetting on all this is that the reason that they're paying £14.95 for pay-per-view games is to make sure that salaries are being paid for footballers. Because if no one's watching, then the TV companies aren't spending hundreds of millions of pounds every season to show these games, which is directly costing or going to cost clubs salaries. They won't be able to afford to pay players. And it's just another example for me of how fans, because he makes the point, Henry Winter makes the point, the Premier League in its arrogance and or naivety failed to consider supporters. It perceives the fan base as a compliant cash cow. My argument is, for too long, we have been compliant cash cows. We really are. We are gluttons for punishment because we are the ones funding it. But just reinforcing the point for me, as I was about to say, that at the moment, football is being run and everything's being done once again to allow multimillionaires to continue playing football. And it does great. It really does great at the moment. So I think as fans, the next step for maybe perhaps AFC Wimbledon is beyond... We've achieved what we always set out to do. We got back into the Football League. We've got back to Plough Lane. We've got our own stadium. Our job is done. We should enjoy it when it comes to time we can get back into stadiums. But maybe we need to start taking a lead on other issues. And I certainly think something needs to be done about the scale and the size of the Premier League.
Yeah. And I said to you before we started recording that Gary Neville did it's like 23-minute slot on YouTube at the moment. It's getting a lot of views, and he talks about the big, the big project, and also he's involved with a group of 8 people looking at getting government to basically be an independent regulator for it. Which, hey, look, I think it's a good thing. I think one of the interesting things that he says on that is that the Premier League are treating it as if it's a closed shop. Whereas actually, if you look at teams, teams like Newcastle have been out of that league, teams like Sheffield United have been out of that league. And the Premier League wasn't set up to be an exclusive club. It was set up, actually, when it was set up in 92, was to distribute money down towards the lower leagues. And it's forgot that. It's got greedy. It's got selfish. And I think the 14.95 for the game is a little bit of a red herring, I think. The problem is, the money comes in from internationals. International money is probably more than what comes in through your Sky and BT. So even though fans in this country could, you wonder, this is a once in a generation experience we're having here with the pandemic. Is it going to force fans to go, do you know what? My priorities have changed. I'm not going to go and spend this money. I'm not going to spend 60, 70, 80 quid to get into the Emirates Stadium. Is it going to force them to do that? Because ultimately, there's no point us fans moaning if we go back to doing what we used to do. The Premier League would then continue to use as a cash cow. Cash cow. Say that with you. Had a drink. So I think it's really important that I think there should be independent regulation. that can, because at the moment everyone's biased. You know, West Ham Steve Parish at Palace making a stupid comment saying Tesco doesn't help out the corner shop. Crystal Palace is the biggest yo-yo club ever. You know, and it's just like they forget their roots, and it's not right. I think we've gone some way to doing it with the salary cap, but we all know that the salary cap is actually going to detach us even from the Championship. So there's so many levels in there. I think it needs an outside regulation. I'm not surprised that people are not paying it, but it doesn't mean it ain't working, because, like I say, the money coming in, the international money coming in, that's where the money needs to be funded, you know, pushed down. And Gary Neville, just very quick before I finish, Gary Neville said a really interesting point. He said, how much money does the Premier League need? In terms of, we get the most money. Premier League is the most watched league in the world, has the biggest TV deal in the world. Yet we still have teams from Italy, from Spain, from Germany, still being able to put good squads together and win Champions Leagues. So would it diminish the quality of the Premier League when actually we said, do you know what, let's give a little bit more to the Championship, give a little bit more to League One, give a little bit more to non-league? It wouldn't diminish it. We just pay stupid money, but we don't get any extra quality for it. So, yeah, there's my rant.
No, I agree. And it comes back to the point you've been making over the last few weeks. We've totally lost sight of what football is all about. And it's not, as you said, about hundreds of thousands of pounds a week on salaries to footballers who, very sorry, you might retire early, but you can always go on and earn your living via other means, like footballers of yesteryear had to do.
I'd like to say one thing as well. Sorry, just one thing. So you just reminded me. There was a really sad story of a Man City player released by Manchester City this week, who tragically took his own life. That is, you know, it just triggered me when you talked about salaries. These kids see these players on ridiculous money, and they want to be like them. And then when they're released from that Premiership bubble, they see nothing outside of it. And we should never, ever have a situation where a young footballer who wasn't good enough for Man City, but would probably be able to find a club in the lower leagues, should never, ever have a situation where he takes his own life. It's tragic. But we've got to address this, because kids, when they're dropped, when they have everything they want, you know, I can imagine in Man City, he's got his boots, he's got all the training gear, and he's released, and he's gone. And he tragically took his own life, and it really got me this week, actually. It really, you know, that should never happen. 17 years old, probably would have been able to find his career somewhere else. Yeah, he took his own life.
And your point there, Stu, backs up exactly what we've been saying. We've, like I said before, totally lost perspective on what football is, especially at the top level. We've got no concept of where it really fits in the grand scheme of things. And on that line, I would like just to read out another paragraph from another Times article on Tuesday. This is from Rick Broadbent, who's talking. It was done under the guise of a tribute to Frank Boff, but I think who passed away this week, the former grandstand presenter. But he touches again at where football has gone, and sport, well, no, it's mainly football has gone in the past 30 odd years. And it's, again, just to echo the points we've been making over the last few weeks of the podcast, but how we totally, it's too much. It's far too much. The paragraph reads, and this is going to add more perspective to the perspective that you, Stu, have just given there with the Man City youngster. He says, since the days of Frank Boff, we consume sport in an entirely different way. We binge. It is 24 hours a day, and although the adverts say the opposite, that means little really matters. This is the age of a gravely serious pundit talking about Burnley's defensive line as if it's HS2. We watch what we like, when we like, and then abuse anyone who saw it differently on Twitter. In the old days, we watched what Boff told us to and were grateful. Controversy was reserved for real things, such as when he presented for the 1972 Olympic Games, when David Coleman, his predecessor, was in the village where Israeli athletes were being held hostage. And I just thought that paragraph just summed up and was much needed perspective for a lot of people to realise what is actually going on.
Yeah, I've not read that. I've not read that. That's really powerful, isn't it? Because you're right. You're right. Controversy now is if Mourinho says something controversy. All right, I don't want to go on to this too much. Controversy is if the Bolton manager tells a kid to man up. That's controversial. I know we shouldn't use man up. It's just, it's like unfortunately, the media and the Twitter want controversy. They want something to talk about. And yeah, we all get sucked into that. That's a really powerful paragraph, actually. Yeah.
I'll go further. Say controversy or controversy, however you want to say it, these days comes down to footballers not being paid or taking a pay cut or not being offered a salary of £200,000 a week and then kicking up a fuss about it. It's Yaya Toure not being said happy birthday to by his team. Do you know, all these things are just really not important. But 24 hours a day, like I said, 24 hours a day, news, media, social media, which gets a kicking in that paragraph as well, thankfully.
Yeah.
And we lose sight. But hey.
Yeah.
Let's bring a little bit of levity to the show to finish off. It is our game. Whose 9 is it anyway? Stu, this week, the number I've chosen is number 10. So very, very quickly, 1998-99, who won number 10?
Would it have been Holdsworth or was that too late? I think he was gone by then. I'm going for Dean Holdsworth. I don't think it's right.
Okay, 1990-2000.
1990-2000. Who was in that team? Was it Super League? I should know number 10s, but it's like a number that's not used anymore. Marcus Gale, and it's not, but I can't think who the 10 would have been.
2013-2014.
So we got that would have been League One. Jack Midson.
Well, you got 1 out of 3.
I didn't think I got that.
You did say a correct name for the middle one, but I'll go through them. So Jack Midson, correct. 2013-14, it was indeed Jack Midson. That was his last season with us. I think Akinfenwa took that number the following season.
Yeah.
98-99, would you believe, was actually Andy Roberts. And he would then be moved from that shirt the following season because Chris Perry departed. So Andy Roberts took the number 4 shirt and the number 10 shirt went to Jason Ewell. And I will always remember Jason Ewell was number 10 because in 1990-2000, we famously beat Watford 5-0.
Okay.
And the goals were scored in consecutive order by 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, which were Carl Court, Robbie Earle, John Hartson, Jason Ewell, nice little nutmeg there before tailing and finishing, and then Marcus Gale with the half volley. So happy days. Watford, you suck. 5-0. Did the double over that year, Watford, you little shithouses. Sorry, go on.
Do you know what? I watched a game. How can I put this without getting myself in trouble? I watched something that had Robbie Earle commentating in America. He was one of the studio guests with Robbie
Mud
Mustoe.
wrestling? Why can't you tell us?
Well, because how I was watching it. Let's leave it at that.
What is going on? I want to know what is this?
It was.
Were you adjusting your music on your headphones at the time? What was going on?
It was a £14.95 game that I watched on American League. Put it that way. And I think it was a Brighton game, West Brom Brighton, I think.
Nice.
And Robbie Earle and Robbie Mustoe are the guests in, I think, NSB. There's a channel in America. And it was just so refreshing to hear Robbie Earle talking about football. Doesn't look like he's aged. Still looks the same. You know, he's like you. It doesn't age. Do you know what I mean? So,
I do age. I've just got to 26. I mean,
from
here on,
slowly.
it's just
Very slowly.
Yeah.
But it was just so refreshing to see him. And you just think sometimes, you know, we talk about commentators and stuff like that. It's such a shame in a way that he's in America. Would be nice for him to come back to Plough Lane maybe at some point. And such a big part of Wimbledon, you know, back in the Premier League when he joined in Port Vale. I suppose for me, my idols or people that I looked up to are like the Robbie Earls who come along at that point, you know, John Scales and stuff like that. So, yeah, no, nice to see Robbie Earle. But yes, I remember that 5-0 win. Great stuff.
Happy days, and a good way to end the show this week. So that is us done. Thank you very much for listening, Stu. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Updates from actually it's Milton Keynes next, isn't it? So maybe not. Something will be happening. We'll be in touch before the Doncaster game. Don't worry, there's loads going on the Tuesday. So keep on following us on Twitter at 9Wires Podcast for more updates from us. But as I say, that is it for now. Stu was just talking about his idols, and I'm going to sign off by talking about one of mine. So Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, 2 + 2 = 4. and we shall speak to you again next Friday.